Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is episode number 84. Joining me as always,
Trace Trylko. Hello, everyone.
Well,
what do you got for me here? Well,
final Temple 26, UCF 25.
Feels like a hangover,
the last
doesn't it?
second of the game,
Ugh.
and by 1 point. And that's, I've said this before, and I told you what my headline was going to be.
Yes.
The plug came out of the boat, and the boat sank.
Yes.
So
I will credit you. You also called it, I think, about 37 seconds into the game that this would go down to the last play. You did say that to
I
me,
did.
Sitting next to me.
Last second, last play.
Yeah, you did say it really early on in the game. Had to laugh leaving the game. Some UCF students distraught, right? And, guy's beside himself. And I said, dude, I've been at this for 20-plus years. You don't know pain. You don't know pain yet, freshman. There are going to be days like that. You know what? And I think 24 hours later as we record this, there are going to be days like this. Mackenzie Milton's a freshman quarterback, and Scott Frost is a first-year head coach, and mistakes were made, and Scott Frost owned up to them, and I credit him with that. We have spoken for some time on this podcast in that George O'Leary era, being frustrated week after week about the accountability, and Scott Frost owned up to it. And you know what? He's going to look back on this. They're all going to look back on this as a moment that they grew and they learned from. That's my hope out of this loss.
Well, like I think we talked last week, I'm definitely a glass half empty guy. So, this isn't the end of the world, though. I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. But also, we have to expect these type of things. We were 0-12 last year. And I know that we've said a million times that this team wasn't an 0-12 team last year. I mean, even though that was their record, they weren't. The players weren't an 0-12. They had quality players there. They just had given up. But I think that some of these things we've really had it good this year, except for Michigan and Maryland. Everything else has really been good.
They could be 5-1.
Yeah,
right.
Well,
save some mistakes.
Right. But we knew that wasn't going to happen coming into it. And I at some point we'll go back and find out what we said, our hopes. I think I said 4 wins or 5 wins would be awesome, but we're at that point where I could feel it coming at the beginning of the game.
Yes, you did.
I could feel it. And unfortunately, I mean, of course I hoped that it wouldn't turn out like that, but I just had a feeling that this one was going to be a little weird. And when we started not scoring any points in the second half, I knew we were in big trouble. We couldn't finish drives. We couldn't, the biggest, glaringest moment to me when I was the most upset was when we did not, we needed a first down to end the game, basically.
No, the 8 yards we needed.
Yeah. Well, whatever. When we started the drive, we needed a first down.
One first down, yeah.
And we could have ran out the clock.
Yeah.
And that didn't happen, and bam, 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 and we lose a game. It was that easy.
A lot of things to look back on a game like this, and you said run out the clock, but difficulty running. First game that's been the case. UCF's racked up a lot of impressive rushing totals throughout the season so far. They're just going to be games like this, and I think we got to save ourselves from total meltdown and be realistic about this. Coming up, we've got former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, and I really enjoyed listening to Kyle's insights, and I think fans will as well. I love when Kyle takes us into the locker room and talks about how do you regroup after a game like this, because just as soon as you know it, they're going to be back at practice, and they travel to Connecticut. They've got the game coming up Saturday, high noon. And you know what that means. It's a road game.
Post-game live.
Yeah.
That will be immediately following the UConn game on Rabble.tv, and we will be here taking your calls. You can call us. I'm going to give the phone number just in case I do it wrong again on the thing on Rabble.tv, 407-401-9184, 407-401-9184, and I am looking forward to talking to all of you. Are you going to be here this time as well?
I should be here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That'll be great.
I should be here.
So both of us will be here, and we absolutely love this post-game live thing. In fact, I really, really wished that we could have done it last night.
Can you
we're
imagine?
Trying to figure out. We're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Depression hotline, how may we help you?
Well, I was sitting in the car listening to Mark Daniels, his post-game show, and I just was thinking, wow, we could be doing a call-in show at this point, and the fans, and I was talking to people on Twitter after the game until well into the early morning, and we could have done that. We will get it worked out. I'm hoping to get it worked out by next season where we can do it.
What is it you need? You need equipment to do this.
I need a generator. I need, a new laptop. A
little more than MacGyvering
some new microphones.
Yeah.
It's a totally different
Where
thing.
would we do this? We're going to do this in the parking lot? Where would we be?
Well, we could set up a tent. We could have some lights, and we could sit there in the parking lot, and people can even come by and talk to us right there.
Oh,
we can have an extra microphone and an extra headset that somebody could put on and sit down and talk with us. Maybe Kyle Israel or maybe one of you all that are listening. I think that would be great.
Well, we got some time to work on this.
Yeah, so those are the things. I mean, a generator, a laptop. We're talking, a couple grand that I got to pull out of my wherever that comes from, and I haven't figured that out yet.
Donate plasma. You got to start donating plasma.
I already work a lot, but anyway. Hey, if anybody wants to help us out with one of those things, feel free to call up. The number is 407-401-9184.
Hey, you got an extra generator in the garage.
If you've got an extra very quiet generator to, that we could, borrow, or, you could donate to us or whatever. You never know. $100 here, $100 there could really help. So I'm not going to ask for that, but I'm saying if you want to donate, we would be glad to take it because it would really help us out. And you never know, next year we could do the post-game live after home games and situations like this.
With an extra home game, it looks like, on the schedule.
Extra home game,
7 home games, 5 road games next year.
So I think it would have been great last night, like I said, to have
therapy session.
A therapy session. Totally, because people need to talk about these things. I mean, I think after the Michigan game, the post-game live show was great just because, and that was the first one, just because people were able to call in and get some stuff off their chest and talk to some other people that,
Well, as it is,
anyway.
UCF is 1-1 now in American play in the thick of the trailing behind the leaders, the Cows. They're in that muddled middle. This was an opportunity to knock out Temple, really, and give them a couple of losses. And 3-3 overall. Troublesome, though. 1-2 at home, and you look back, squandering the game here against Temple and that Maryland game with all of the turnovers that, there's really, you're going to look back on this, as Scott Frost is saying, that this really could be a 5-1 team, and they've got to regroup. Changing expectations game, right? If you'd said we were 3-3 after 6, and now with the bye week being wiped out there, added with the hurricane coming in, it backloads the schedule. A lot of home games. Yeah, that's important. Then you got to win those home games, or it doesn't do you any good to have all of those home games. But as it turns out now, back-to-back road games coming up, UConn and Houston. Got to get that win at UConn.
So let's talk a little bit more about last night's game.
Yeah, must we?
We got some sound clips that we can play. Coach Frost was, extremely distraught. I have not seen him like that before. Like, I honestly posted on Twitter that I honestly thought that he was going to cry. Like, if I would have seen tears come out of his eyes and him weeping, I would really not have been surprised. He was that upset. And that's great. And we talk a little bit with Kyle about that as well, but I really think that is a good thing for your coach to be a little bit emotional and not being emotional in a nasty way to the press or to anybody else, but to actually, show emotion that he was actually hurt by it, and that. But let's look at a couple stats real quick. There's a couple glaring ones here. One of the things that we really didn't get going on was rushing, and this is a thing that we had always done in all these games, up until this point. You knew that we were going to have issues at some point. We were going to come across the defense that just was going to be really good against the run, against us, against the run anyway.
Kept seeming like we were stretching out the field rather than cutting back in, and credit to Temple. Their defense.
Yeah,
as well.
I don't think we ran any differently than we normally try to run, but it just wasn't working against them. Temple had a very good defensive line and a very good, second defensive line, first secondary with the linebackers back there. But their defensive ends were incredible. Number 7, and I've got his name here someplace. Number 7, Reddick. Reddick is good, and that dude will be playing on Sundays, trust me. But, we actually ran for 172 yards, and then we lost 86 yards, so we wound up, netting 86 yards.
Yeah,
when was the last time?
A big part of that 170-something was McKenzie's big run.
Yeah, 63-yard or 60-something yard run.
Isn't it funny, though, how our expectations change and we're disappointed by the rush total in this game and the running performance, even though this team has exceeded all of last year's
but
talents,
we've
right?
gotten used to the rushing game being good. There was offensive line problems. Tyler Hudanik, came out at one point, and I think it kind of fell apart at that point, personally, and we were talking about that last night.
I kept feeling it with Tyler out, and we don't know as we record, and, the team is tight-lipped about these things. We haven't known really about any of the injuries.
I hope that he's okay.
We thought McKenzie would be back, and then he wasn't, and so we don't know. But
I watched the replay when I got home. It's horrible and as hard that it was.
You came home and watched it?
I came immediately home and watched the replay,
again.
yes.
Yeah, that's a glutton right there.
Well, I wanted to check on a couple of things. Number one, I got in a little Twitter argument with somebody about that first penalty. And the first penalty was Mutcherson kicking the dude in the head. He did it twice, right in front of the referee.
Go back. Wasn't the penalty before that was Delahaye kicking it out of bounds that moved him up the field? And it was back-to-back penalties that got him to the 50-yard line.
Right, but, yeah. I mean, a kick out of bounds penalty it is what it is.
It was 1 of 12, though.
Right, but that's something that kind of happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Mutcherson's thing is as great of a player as he is, and, as much as he has helped, I think there's some issues with that guy. I really do, because, he came from Iowa State for some reason, transferred. I think I remember hearing that he was in some trouble there.
He's intense.
Yeah, he's intense, but you don't kick a guy in the head when he's down, right?
Agreed.
Especially right in front of the referee. If you want to do something like that, use your brain a little bit and do it under the pile. Or because that happens. If you've played football, you know this, especially if you've played high-level college football or any other high-level game. Unfortunately, stuff like that happens. Dudes get kneed in the balls when you're down there. There's punches thrown in the under the everybody else when there's a big pile on. There's eyes that get poked. There all kinds of stuff. But you don't do it when the referee is literally standing at your shoulder, number one. But number two, you shouldn't do that anyway. You shouldn't kick anybody, and he did it twice. And that was what the penalty was. And, as much as I hate to say it, I honestly think he should have been thrown out of the game for that.
He did not leave the game.
No.
And
that is much more important to me, stupid things like that people do, than targeting. How everybody gets called on this targeting, blah blah blah. Half the time it's not targeting, but blatant stupid things like that should be an immediate ejection. As much as I hate, for one of our leading tacklers and the guy that made the one interception to have to do that, well, he should know that he needs to protect what's going on here and not do stupid stuff. So I hope that he gets, at least a good ass chewing, I'll say, by Scott Frost or somebody this week. He has to, I would think. Anyway, that's my rant on that.
That's your rant?
Because that really bothered me. Anyway, back to Tyler Hudanik is what I was talking about. He got rolled on by another player. It was totally not a thing that was intentional. It just happened after he fell down after blocking, and then one of the other players from Temple fell right on his knee. So hopefully that's not bad. Hopefully that was, he wears the knee braces, as most of the offensive linemen do, but they were, looking at the I believe it was his left knee. So hopefully he will be back. He is a very good offensive lineman, and we need all of them we can get, obviously. Mackenzie Milton, 13 of 22 and 1 interception, 210 yards. 2 touchdowns, the longest being Smith's longest reception of his career 55. So far, 55 yards. Yeah. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful throw. It was right on the money. He made a couple of those. So this is not Mackenzie Milton's fault. This is, he played a good game. Honestly,
it's a team loss. It's a team loss,
but honestly, and I know that people are starting to melt down on the message board a little bit and starting to, blame Coach Frost a little bit, and I think it's a little too early to do that. We have to remember he's a first-year coach.
That was his 6th game as a head coach.
He's going to make mistakes. Yeah. They're going to get behind and really not, and get confused sometimes and not know what to do. There were a couple things that, could have been done a little bit better, and he knows that. And, let's hear what he had to say, actually, about the loss last night.
I don't have much to say. I'm sick to my stomach. We let one get away. That's really 2 in our own building. We let it get away, and those things can't happen. We all got to do a better job finishing. It's a learning process for all of us, but those are lessons you don't want to have to learn. And I feel terrible for the kids, but I'll always be proud of them. They're good on defense. I give credit to them, but we got to play smarter. That we got to coach smarter. We got to play smarter. We got the ball. Once we had 25 points, we had the ball on their side of the 50. I don't know, 4 or 5 more times, and either penalty or dumb play took us out of there. And defensively, I'm not sure they would have scored in the first half without a kick out of bounds and 2 unsportsmanlike conducts on us and jumping off sides on their hard count. Listen, we got to coach them better to make sure that those kind of things don't happen.
All right, you heard it right there. We got to coach them better to make sure that these things don't happen. So that's good. I love to hear that from Coach Frost. I love to hear that from any coach, taking at least his share of the blame.
And he certainly has, and I think it's a team loss. I think we all feel it. Fan base feels it. Coaching staff has owned up to it. Players know the role they played in it. But, I'm walking out, and guy behind me, I don't know if he was joking, and I was just in the zone heading to the car at that point, right? And he's like, firefrost.com.
Oh, whatever. That's ridiculous.
And again, I didn't turn, I didn't look, I didn't want to acknowledge it. He was talking to his buddy. I don't know how serious he was, and I know people are fired up at the end of the game. But
we are going to be lucky to have Coach Frost here as long as we can have him here.
6 games. They need to regroup now. Still a lot of goals for the season.
Get better.
Still a lot of goals for the season. And you think that they could have been 5-1, and maybe this is a bit of an equalizer. You know what? We talked several weeks back that we know Mackenzie's going to make mistakes as a freshman. Players are going to make mistakes, and Coach Frost is going to make mistakes. And it's going to feel much better sometime soon they're going to win a game like this. They're going to come out and win a close game.
And that's another thing.
They just haven't done that yet.
We are still, and we're a really young team. This is a young team that's just learning this new offense, this new defense. Think about what next year is going to be. It's going to
with more of Scott Frost and his staff's recruits. This is
absolutely,
a lot of the same players from the 0-12 team.
It's going to take time. It's going to take time, people. There's no reason to melt down and say fire Frost. That's ridiculous.
Again, people are reacting and they're upset and a lot of emotion leaving the stadium. By the way, homecoming, a lot of good things happened all during the week. They had the fireworks on Friday and the Spirit Splash, which is one of the best events.
Which Scott Frost and the players took,
How about former UCF player Travis Fisher?
That was
out
awesome.
into the reflecting pond with his helmet on.
Yeah, leading the, yeah.
And he was so excited about that. And I was a little disappointed. We were talking about it during the game. Where's the crowd? Announced 38,299. I'll tell you what, I understand there's coming off the 0-12, but the fast and the fierce and the excitement. And UCF really is trying to put on a good all-day, game day environment. And you tailgated a little bit. I walked across campus, swung by better than Ezra for a while.
You would have thought that there would be more people out there for that.
And again, I think the people that go, have a good time.
Absolutely.
And, the students were out there. Just disappointing on a homecoming, which is usually a 40,000-plus crowd.
This is what gets me through the work week.
Looking forward to the games.
Looking forward to the games, because that's what my Saturday is, and then my Sunday is doing this, So, yeah, I mean, I don't know what is up with people not coming out there. I don't understand.
I mean, UCF's between fireworks and game day atmosphere and better than Ezra. I mean, they're really trying to put together this whole game day atmosphere, and maybe there's just some folks that are skeptical about the whole thing. But even in the defeat, and this was painful, and Maryland was a different kind of loss, and that hurt obviously to lose at the end as well. Golly, these games are far more exciting than we sat through last year.
Absolutely.
Your buddy that sits behind you there at the games saying, "Boy, isn't it easier
Jeff,
to talk?" Yeah, he says, "Isn't this better to talk about this season than it was to podcast every week last year?"
Absolutely.
Obviously, yeah.
But all is not lost. I said that at one point last year. All was lost, and it was. But anyway, let's hear what the players had to say. I got two clips here. First is Dimitri Brim, and then Mackenzie Milton.
We were very hopeful and prideful that we were gonna, close the game out in the last seconds. But once they drove down the field like the way they did, it was kind of demoralizing, to say the least. But like I said, it's just we're gonna have to move forward and gut check ourselves and really tune in these next weeks to control our own destiny for this season.
Drives just started getting stagnant. Shot ourselves in the foot with some dumb penalties. Temple started making some plays. I mean, we just couldn't finish drives tonight in the second half and late in the second quarter. But I mean, we'll get better. We'll learn from it.
There you go. And they both said we'll learn from it and we'll get it together. So that is what is important for the student athletes and the coaches and all of us to remember is they're working on it. They're working as hard as they can. They're not taking a day off, except maybe the day for the hurricane. But it'll all come together. It will. I'm trying to stay as positive as I can.
I'm with you on this. Not positive, obviously, Saturday night leaving the stadium. It's not that I feel better about it as we record on Sunday, but as I've digested, I went 3-3. And, we talked to we're not going to have time.
I got to say one more thing, though, about that. You just made me think about something. Our fans are actually good, though. You didn't hear boos at the end of the game.
You had a lot of people leave, though.
You had a lot of people leave, but you didn't see bottles being thrown like in Miami, those idiots down there. You don't see that kind of thing. So our fans, even though they were disappointed, our fans are good fans as far as not doing stupid stuff. You didn't see, I don't know. I mean, if somebody wants to chant that they or, scream that they want to have a website, whatever, I'm sure they can have whatever website they want.
Yeah. Well, what I was getting at is that UConn comes up. We've interviewed, but we're probably not going to have time for it in this program, so we'll release it as an extra during the week with a guy from UConn that takes a look at what I think is a very beatable team in the Huskies. And I think when we get into this conversation with Kyle, we break down specific moments more, and I think that this may be our best analysis and breakdown of the game that we've had for the first 6 games, and because there were things to take a look at, clock management and calling timeouts and play selection and footwork and these sorts of things. I think we did a good job of talking about that with Kyle, so that's something that we'll get into in just a few minutes.
But first, we have a favor to ask. We want everybody to sign up for this contest that we have going. East Coast Paddle out of New Smyrna Beach is giving away a boat-assisted paddleboard eco tour for 2. It's $110 value as part of its support for the Knightline podcast. Please enter to win. Just click on the contest entry form on the left side of our website, www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com. And here's Tim to tell you a little bit more about that.
Hello, Knight Nation. This is Tim Baker with East Coast Paddle, owner, operator, and fellow UCF alum. East Coast Paddle is located in Orlando's favorite beach town of New Smyrna Beach. East Coast Paddle is rated by TripAdvisor as the #1 rated water tour activity in New Smyrna. We are most known for our boat-assisted paddleboard eco tours. This is a 2-hour dock-to-dock experience like none other on the island. You'll paddle with manatees, dolphins, and have a chance to see many of the 4,000 species that inhabit our lagoon system. You'll take professional pictures throughout the tour that are sent directly to your email at no additional charge. This is not all we have to offer. Traditional paddleboard rentals delivered to your location, paddle fit classes, and several fishing options. Please reach out to us at 386-402-8585 or visit us at our website, eastcoastpaddle.com, or follow us on Facebook at East Coast Paddle or Instagram at ECPSUP.
Welcome to Inside the Huddle with former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, brought to you by the Little Greek Fresh Grill. Fresh, flavorful, fabulous. Waterford Lakes, 855 North Althea Trail, Orlando.
Let's look at the latest game through the eyes of former UCF quarterback Kyle Israel, who's stopping by Knightline to talk about the Temple game. Kyle, first, your general observations. Are you feeling it as much as we are after this game?
It's obviously a difficult loss. Certainly, anytime that you lose in that fashion, basically on the last play of the game, after a team drives 60 or 70 yards for a score, is just a tough way to lose as a fan and as a player and coaching staff. But I think when you look at it, it's even more disappointing considering the commanding lead and seemingly control of the game that we had, especially through most of the first half, to really kind of go out and lay an egg in the second half is obviously it's disappointing, and it's the type of win type of loss that leaves a real bad taste in your mouth.
What do you think was the major problem in the whole thing? I mean, we saw some offensive line breakdown. We saw a very good defensive line and a very good defense, to be honest with you, in the second half especially. They really got it together of Temple. What do you think was the main breakdown as far as UCF? I mean, like the plug kind of came out of the boat and the boat sank, towards the end.
Well, I think it came down to 2 or 3 things that are really glaring. Number one, we were horrible on third down last night. I think 2 of 9 or 2 or 10. And if you can't keep drives alive with this type of offense, with as fast a pace as we go, and you can't do that on third down, you're going to put your defense in some tough situations, and those type of things will lead to guys and players tiring out, which I think is what we saw, especially on that last drive with the secondary. And so we struggled there on third down for sure. Also, you got to give credit to Temple's rushing game. I mean, they ran the ball really, really well. Not many teams have outrushed us this season, if any at all. And they just dominated the running game on both sides of the ball. They were able to hold us, I think, to like 86 yards and, do a really good job of getting 4 and 5 yards a clip with their offense and really controlling the game. I mean, I think they won the time of possession battle by 15 or 17 minutes when it was all said and done, and that's not uncommon for the team that we're going to be now. But when you can't convert on third down, the other team wins the time of possession, and you can't establish or defend the running game, especially in the second half. I think the culmination of those things really were the big momentum changer and some of the biggest struggles for UCF.
All right, on to Mackenzie Milton and the way that he played last night. There were definitely some good things that he did. Definitely not a totally negative, opinion or analyzing of him. But what did you see that he did good, and what did you see that he did bad?
Well, obviously, in the beginning of the game, he was able to make plays, keeping the ball on the zone read and taking it for 63 yards, and then finding Trylko Smith with that pass in the first quarter, first drive of the game, I believe. He made big plays. And then I think one of the biggest things, he was trying to make big plays, which led to some of his downfalls with those sacks. I mean, we took some huge sacks and huge chunks of lost yardage. And I think those are things that, they weren't where the protection just broke down, and then all of a sudden the defense was right on top of him and he couldn't do anything. He was trying to, and you can tell I lost my voice a little bit last night.
Yeah,
he was trying.
It's all good. It happens to me all the time.
He was trying to, scramble and make plays, and that Temple front seven's athletic. They really, really are, and I think they displayed that last night. And so he was not able to run away or escape the pocket as much as I thought that he believed he could do. And so I think he's going to have to learn from that, obviously, for sure. But I think it's kind of what you're going to get with the Mackenzie Milton, especially as a true freshman. And he's not going to be the most polished guy in the world. I know that he's probably working towards that really hard. But he's going to have some big plays in his arsenal, and we saw that last night, what he can do with his feet, what he can do with his arm and time. So I think about what I expected, I think that he would probably just need to do better on third down for sure.
Do you think that maybe they were a little conservative on the play calling with him this time? It definitely was nothing like the play calling with the Maryland game or the FIU game. And the other question that I have, I wonder if he was 100%.
Hard to tell about the 100%. I mean, you can speculate that, but I don't think it's fair to put that out there very much because we don't know. I mean, he's had a couple weeks off now. I think he was probably close to 100%, but who am I to tell? I have no idea. I do think that you got to give credit to Temple's defense as well. I mean, they were a pretty good defense coming into the game, and how they played last night I thought was impressive. But I would say that it was a little bit more conservative for sure. We were never really able to get Adrian Killens going, just never really able to get anything going in the rushing game. In the running game, 86 yards for us is like if we ran for 30 or 40 yards any other year. That's not very many for what we've been averaging. So I think the lack of rushing game certainly hurt Mackenzie, put him in a lot of long down type situations. And there weren't many times there, especially in the second half, where we had the type of momentum to move the chains and get into a rhythm. So the play caller's in a flow of the game where he can call some creative plays. And when you don't get the yardage on first or you get an incomplete pass on first or second down, that really stalls this type of offense. So I think it was a little bit more conservative, but I think Temple's defense played really well and lights out there in the second half. And, hopefully they'll be opening up more in the future. But there were still plays out there to be made, I believe.
6 games in, one of the hallmarks of this Scott Frost team is a lot of penalties. And in this game, a lot of pre-snap penalties. All told, 12 penalties for 110 yards. I think as fans, you want to say it's a lack of discipline. You as a player, what leads to that? How do you make it correctable, in the words of George O'Leary?
That's a good question, Trace. It's really something I thought always could see a difference. When Coach O'Leary was really, really frustrated about penalties, I would remember he would bring referees out to practice and call drills, have referees in drills and in scrimmages or in pass skeleton, throwing flags, and players were being punished for it. And that happened a few times in my career. We had a game where we struggled with penalties. But it has to be fixed in practice. I mean, you have to make such an emphasis on it and hold players accountable to it. That's what has to take place. So I don't know that you can do a whole lot other than really, really harp on it and remind the guys. But there's some you got to question. I don't think there's a lack of discipline with the entire team, but when it comes to penalties and kind of stupid plays sometimes, I mean, you're seeing a little bit of that. And sometimes you're going to win games when you have a lot of penalties, but when you lose, they certainly are very obvious, and last night was one of those cases.
One of the things that happened in this game that really bothered me at the time and bothers me now, but kind of got lost in the way that the game ended, was the way the first half ended. UCF was driving, I don't remember if they were at midfield or whatever, and then there were 52 seconds left, and Temple had a player go down. They took 10 seconds off the clock. UCF had a timeout or two. If you recall this series here, where then UCF let the clock go down and didn't do anything, and that whole series there seemed odd to me. And then I point out the end of the game where they had timeouts but didn't call a timeout to give the defense a breather. Coach Frost has taken responsibility for the way the game played out, but do you see mistakes in coaching in both of the ways each of the halves ended?
Trace, I was confused as well with how the first half ended. I thought there was opportunity there to try to go down and get points or at least make an attempt. I don't know exactly why that wasn't tried to be taken advantage of, whether it was you're kind of comfortable with your lead or something along those lines. I'm not sure. In the second half, I absolutely would have called a timeout after that second completion. They hit the big dig route down the center of the field. And, the defense looked like it was reeling a little bit and really trying to get back to – I remember watching Shaquem Griffin running sprinting 30 yards down the field just to get lined up again. And then, Temple was ready to go. And so I probably would have used that timeout if it was me out there, for sure. And, unless you have so much confidence in your defense that you're thinking to yourself, hey, I mean, Temple's – there's not much time. I can tell you, having been in those situations as a quarterback, and Walker did very good executing that drive. That's a tough situation right there with no timeouts and the clock running, and you need a score to win. So the communication and all those things are very difficult to accomplish for an offense. So sometimes you don't want to give them an opportunity to regroup and really draw up a play. But when you got a fourth year starting quarterback and some weapons on the outside, although they hadn't been able to throw the football all night, when it came down to it, you had a guy that had been in that situation before, and you wanted to make sure that you probably had a good plan for whatever that last play may have been. And so I probably would have burned the timeout right there just to get my guys regrouped.
We saw some strange play from the offensive line last night. It seemed like, and I know that the defense was really good, especially the front seven. What did you think about how our offensive line played, and did you think that it kind of fell apart when Tyler Hudanik went out?
I think that Temple did do a lot of things, so I'm not going to harp on that. I think that the blitzes that they brought and the pressures that they brought put a lot of stress on the interior line, without a doubt. I don't think it was our best game. I can't tell you what mistakes were being made because I've never really played in that type of offense or where they're missing it. They just didn't seem to be the same offensive line that we've seen earlier this year. I didn't see any huge difference when the lineup changed and when we had the injury. But it's just hard to tell. I haven't been able to rewatch the game a second time. I'm talking to you from just a naked eye point of view. It's just really it's hard to determine. But they did not establish the line of scrimmage. I think that was very clear. And certainly in the passing game, Temple was able to get a fair amount of pressure, especially with those blitzes. So I would sum it up to it wasn't one of their better games, but I'm not sure I'm educated enough at the moment, from what I saw last night to determine, why they struggled.
When I rewatched, I didn't rewatch all of it, but I rewatched part of it, and that was one of the things that really stood out to me was the way that Temple defensive line played, and their defensive ends are monsters. So the other thing is, I don't know how much of Scott Frost's post-game conferences you've been able to see. I know that they're on there's various ways to see them out there. But what do you think of the emotion that he shows a little bit differently than Coach O'Leary showed over the years?
Well, I have not been able to see his post game reaction yet, his post game interview. But
I can tell you the biggest thing yesterday is that he looked like he was going to cry, literally. Like the mouth was making the little. I mean, he was visibly upset and took all the credit, which was interesting. And I like that about him. I like that he gets upset about it. I like that it's personal to him. Unlike some other, coaches that we've had, it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal. But when UCF loses a game, especially that they should have won, he's very emotional. Not mad, not upset, but you can tell that he's heartbroken.
I think that's an important quality for a coach to have, for sure, and I think it's okay to display that. I'm sure there's a lot more coaches in this country that actually feel that way, even more than we may believe. But don't express it, maybe like Coach Frost does. But I think it's crucial. I think it's important for the players to see how much it means to the coaching staff. I think it's important for the fan base and the administration to see how much it means to Coach Frost to lose a game like that. And I know with his pedigree and the amount of football and winning football that he's been a part of around some of the coaching staffs that he's been a part of and has played for, he's not a loser. And he doesn't seem like a guy that's ever going to take losing well. And, sometimes that feeling of loss, especially when you feel like you had the win in your hands, when you're a head coach, in my opinion, is just, Coach O'Leary did used to say every time you lose, you die a little. And that's kind of always stayed with me throughout my life and something that I'll always pass on to my children and anybody that I speak to in regards to winning and losing. I'll always remember Coach O'Leary saying that. Every time you lose, you die a little. And, I think Coach Frost feels the same way. And I'm glad to see that he was emotional. And I'm sure that was an emotional loss, the way that game kind of unfolded, on homecoming. And each and every game this year for UCF, I think, is crucial, especially when you look at our conference, and we seem to be able to compete with the best in the conference at this point in time.
Take us inside the locker room from your experience. How does the team shake off this loss, or is it something that they carry with them as motivation, or what into the UConn game, which has been a bugaboo for UCF through the years, winning on the road at UConn? That stands to be a tough game for them, and especially coming off a loss of this kind.
I think it's always to remember that you can kind of. I've been on an 0-11 team in 2004, and I've been on a team that won a bunch of games. And it's kind of like a victory. I mean, it's there. You feel it. It's like you can taste it in the air. That feeling of victory or that feeling of defeat, is palatable. And you can kind of taste it. And that looms for 24 hours usually. And so, the best thing that you can do is just get back to work. And that sounds like coaches speak, but, the best way to get your mind off of defeat like that is to get back and to look at the next opponent. It's tough. You want to dwell on it. You think about it when you're laying in bed at night and staring up at the ceiling about ways things could have gone differently, et cetera, et cetera. But, you really need some good leadership. I know that one of the reasons that our school had the biggest turnaround in college football history almost at that point in time from 0-11 to 8-5 is because of the leadership that we had on that 2005 team. And they needed the 2004 season to kind of grow up and mature. But guys like Brandon Marshall and Paul Carrington, and Mike Sims-Walker, Stephen Moffitt, Cedric Gagne-Marcoux, we had some talented leaders on that 2005 team that really kept guiding us forward even with losses. So I think leadership is crucial in the locker room. I think understanding that there's still a lot to play for. There's still a lot of things that can happen. This conference seems kind of all over the place with, who's in contention for winning it. So all those things considered, yeah, it's a horrible way to lose and a very tough way to lose, especially at home. And now to have to go 2 weeks on the road, but you just got to get back to work, Tracy. You just got to get in there on Monday and start looking at UConn and realizing that it's a way to put that last game behind you.
Let's go back to quarterback play for a second. 7 sacks of Mackenzie Milton. We focused a little bit on the offensive line. What are you seeing from him? Is he holding on to the ball too long? And maybe talk a little bit more about his mechanics. Are you seeing improvement in him game to game, or is he still making some of the same mistakes?
Well, his mechanics are different for sure. Watching him, especially for a quarterback, he's got his own style. I think that there's some, if I'm going to be critical, I think there's some passes where there's opportunity to really put some velocity on the ball. Sometimes he floats them. He floats some passes, I think. And, if I don't know if it's in the game plan trace or not, but it was clear every time they targeted Jordan Akins last night, good things were happening. And so I know that if I am Mackenzie Milton and there's opportunities in the play calling and the game plan for me to get the ball to Jordan Akins, I'm going to try to find a way to do that because I think that he's a huge, huge asset to Mackenzie. You can do a lot of things with a tight end because a tight end can spell so many things outside of them just running around and catching a pass. They really can help you observe whether or not a team's in man coverage or zone coverage. They're really the last guy to clear out of a zone. So for a running quarterback, seeing a Mike linebacker take off after a tight end, a lot of times that opens the middle of the field up. I mean, Jordan Akins is such a threat that players on defense know where he is at all times. And so I would utilize that as much as possible if I were McKenzie. But I do think that he was holding on to the ball in some of those sacks last night way too long. I mean, you just got to make a decision sometime. It's okay, to live for another down. Throw the ball away, get back to the line of scrimmage and get down, keep yourself safe. All things that we know, but when you're out there, in the crosshairs, training yourself to react appropriately without actually thinking about what you're doing per se, but just purely reacting to the game and making decisions that are crucial, that takes a little bit time for somebody to mature in that regard. So I think that we're seeing that literally with McKenzie. And, I think that he did get a little bit better in his poise in the game, and he stayed, really under control. So there's positives there for sure. But I don't, if anybody said that they thought Mackenzie Milton was going to come in and be the AAC MVP and just lead us to 10 or 11 victories, I would say that's going to be far-fetched, even with this offense and his ability. But I think that he's a quality quarterback that's going to be good here for a long time, and we're just seeing him kind of grow up in front of us.
Yeah, one last thing on McKenzie. His 63-yard touchdown run, I don't know if you saw this, but that run was the second longest run from scrimmage by a UCF quarterback, just right after Dante Culpepper's 75-yard run in 1997. So that was exciting to see, and exciting to see the speed that he has and able to do that on a long run.
I'm surprised Kyle Israel isn't on that list for the longest run from a quarter.
He probably is someplace, but
you're on the list somewhere.
25 or 26 yarder, I think, was my longest touchdown run. But you weren't going to see me break in 63 yarders, that's for sure.
I was shocked, and I was just like, oh, my God, there he goes, So anyway, we don't want to take too much more of your time. Tell us about what's going on at the Little Greek this week.
Well, we just wrapped up our record week in sales just tonight. So an incredible week for us here. Did had a lot of great catering opportunities this week. Obviously, we had a lot of alumni that were in town, and so we had some alumni, stop in and see us, and so I certainly absolutely appreciate that for sure. And just constantly looking to expand. So if anybody's out there that's interested in the franchising opportunities or are tired for working for somebody else and are looking for a career that they can kind of control, sometimes franchising is a good way to do that. And I think that we have a strong product in that regard. So if anybody's interested in franchising, they can reach out to me on Facebook or at the Little Greek Fresh Grill Facebook page as well. And would love to start that process.
You know what I would love to see? I would love to see a Little Greek stand at inside the Bright House Network Stadium down there, because sometimes the food is not good. So
that would be awesome, as long as I have somebody to run it and I don't have to think about it at all.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to have to do that. All right, Kyle, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate talking to you every week, and we will hopefully talk to you next week.
All righty, guys. Sounds good. Thank you.
coast to coast,
and even north of the border in Canada.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Tell your friends about Knightline Postgame Live. It's the only place to talk about UCF's latest road game as soon as the game ends.
We're taking your calls live, so save our number, 407-401-9184. That's 407-401-9184.
Join the conversation with Knights fans across the country. Download the Rabble.tv app today and listen in. Remember, when the clock expires, we go live.
Knightline Postgame Live, your place to talk about football with two of the biggest UCF fans around.
Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, taking a look around the American, the races are starting to heat up on both the east and west side. Cows stay atop the east, 42-27 win over our next opponent, UConn. Houston's over Tulsa in a shootout, 38-31. Memphis knocked off Tulane, 24-14. Full slate. Nobody's on a bye coming up in this week. Cows are at Temple. I guess are we big Temple fans now to shake up the East? We got to be, right? Memphis at number 25. Navy should be a good one. Tulane at Tulsa. East Carolina at Cincinnati. Neither of those teams are a factor in the East race. And number 13, Houston at SMU. Taking a look at what's happening with the Knightline Planner. Men's golf continues at the Tavistock Collegiate Invitational in Orlando through October 18. Men's soccer at Stetson, October 18. Women's tennis, ITA Regionals in Gainesville, October 20. Women's soccer, they're back home finally. Cincinnati at the UCF Soccer Complex, 7 o'clock, October 20th. Volleyball back home too. Tulsa will be at the venue, 7 o'clock, October 21st. Fall ball continues for softball. Eastern Florida State. I don't know how they schedule these teams. I've never heard of some of these teams. At the UCF Softball Complex at 10:30 a.m. on October 21. And then Warner plays the Knights later that day at 5. Men's soccer back home against UConn, October 22 at 7 at the UCF Soccer Complex. Volleyball then has that Sunday game, October 23 against SMU. And finally, women's soccer, same time, same date, just outside the venue they'll be playing. So as it's typically the case, volleyball wraps up a little bit earlier, and you can catch the end of the soccer game.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah,
like
that
a lot.
Time of year.
I'm glad that you came up with this little Knights planner thing. That's good. It's a good thing.
Hey, question for you. What's going on with that Big 12 expansion?
As the world turns.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
This may be, finally, we may be at the end of nothing, right?
Yeah.
Every week we bring up this Big 12 -2. Presidents meet Monday, October 17th to discuss the possibility of league expansion. Many published reports indicating league ain't going to do nothing.
Well, I guess the ESPN and Fox are ponying up more money to the 10 schools to hold off expansion, it sounds like, maybe.
Buying them off.
So we shall see, I guess. I mean,
But, now we may be finally to the point where they just say, we're not doing anything.
Yeah, and I guess that would be okay with me. Just one way or the other, I'd like to know. I just want it to be over. I want all this talk to be over. There's a lot of speculation involved in all of this.
I like the music, though, and the Scott Frost soundbite. I
Yeah.
like both of those things. What are we going to do? We'll be able to talk about it again next week, right?
Do I have this? I don't even know if I have the Scott Frost one.
I like
those
those two things.
Here
there.
it is. This one.
What's he going to
Our
say?
team hasn't talked about it one time. We're not going to talk about it.
Yeah, he doesn't. He doesn't work on this podcast. We talk about it every week.
Well,
that's it. I think 37 seconds on that was pretty good.
That's good.
Yeah.
All right, so Knights in the NFL, Sunday's NFL results. Quarterback Blake Bortles with a 51-yard touchdown in the waning minutes, and Jacksonville beats Josh Sitton's Chicago Bears 17-16, 1 point. They won by 1 point.
Can be done.
It can. What else? Is that all that we had?
That's it. Latavius is out with that toe.
He was out against my Chiefs today.
I
didn't hear his name called. So, what about Brandon Marshall and the Jets?
Monday Night Football.
Oh, they're on Monday Night Football. Okay, well, that's that.
Those are your notable guys that get the stats.
I guess then it's time for news and notes. And now, news and notes from the world of UCF sports. Men's tennis, kudos to Junior Chris Barris, winner of the Roger Farr Classic.
Volleyball digs out a 3-2 win at Temple Sunday. That followed a sweep at UConn Friday. The Knights are now 6-2 in the American, 16-5 overall, and climbing, no doubt, in that RPI that was just released.
Congrats to 7 UCF softball players, among more than 5,000 softball student-athletes named to the 2015-2016 All-American Scholar Athletes.
Speaking of softball, Knights crushed the Florida Institute of Technology 15-0 as fall ball continues.
Women's golf up to number 18 in the first edition of the 2016-17 GolfStat.com rankings.
Women's soccer with a shutout Sunday, 2-0 at Temple. The Knights rebound after being shut out 3-0 at UConn Thursday. Knights are 2-2-1 in the American, 7-6-1 overall, but a pretty strong RPI.
Cross country finishes second over at the Cows Invite. Host the Cows finished third.
It's called something else, but you know when I write that, I'm not calling them by their directionally challenged name.
Yeah.
Men's soccer, they fell 3-2 at Tulsa Saturday night. UCF 1-3 in the American, 3-7 overall. That program is struggling.
And finally, men's and women's basketball hosting a free tutorial with students. October 18th at 6:30 p.m. at the CFE Arena. A tutorial about basketball rules and, play and all that stuff.
I think both of those programs may be looking for some talented student athletes.
Maybe. What's the deal with the walk-ons for football? The call out for that. That's kind of weird too, isn't it?
It's interesting, yeah.
On a Tuesday in the middle of the season.
Maybe we'll find a star.
Maybe one of the soccer players will come over and be a kicker, even though we've got good kickers. I don't know. That's usually the only ones that happen to come out of that. All right, so next week we will see you post-game live, 3:30 or so
when
PM,
the clock expires.
When the clock expires, exactly. On Rabble.tv, I'm Andrew Phegley.
I'm Trace Trylko. Go Knights!
Charge on.
UCF, charge on to the field. With our spirits, we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the heart. Victory is our cry. B-S-E-T-O-R-Y. 2-9